We need more stories that have God as the object, even when he's not the subject. That we haven't done.
Welcome to the Christian Channel. I'm your host, Yanitza Munoz. Today, I am honored to be interviewing Deacon Charlie. Thank you so very much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Awesome to be here with you, Yanitza. It was great. Glad I got here.
Yes, I know LA traffic, but you are here. So I am just in awe with your career.
That's very
You are
sweet.
in media. You've been in media for so many years. You're a producer. And in the world of media, I know for a fact it is not easy. But aside from that, you are a deacon
Yes.
and a family man. And with all that being said, it is just so beautiful to see a deacon who's also in media, because I'm sure that you are all about positive and educational content. Nowadays, I feel like sometimes people stir away from the church, whatever denomination they are, that is. They kind of get lost. But I feel like with you, I'm sure you have your whole story that we're going to talk about, but I love that you are still centered in Christ and a man of service, a family man, a deacon. You are a huge advocate for those in need in our community. So I want to applaud you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to participate in those things that you just mentioned.
Yes.
And it's a journey. I mean, it's been a journey. And it's not like you start off with all these different things. God is super patient, and he kind of puts the pieces together slowly over time. So if you would have asked me, 10 years ago even, would I be doing and living the life that I'm living now? I don't know that I would have described it exactly as it is. But that's the way that you kind of end up in a place and look in the rearview mirror and see very clearly God's handiwork in that. But it's not something that I would have necessarily designed. God laid a foundation, mostly my desire and love for story, writing, things like that. I went to school and I got a minor in film and television production and a major in communications. And I always was attracted to media and story and, kind of didn't know what that meant or what it would do. And I spent a long secular career doing media. And then in recent years, God has been really pointing that towards the vineyard. And it's been a real blessing to be a part of it, but not something I would have necessarily anticipated.
Yes, life can be unpredictable like that. But, hearing that right now coming from you, maybe it's God's way to put someone in the spotlight of mass communications that is a believer, because you can help influence people who might be struggling with anything that they don't want to communicate to the public with. There you go with journalism and storytelling. And with that being said, I know you and your wife are huge advocates for helping the homeless. You guys are ministers in that sense and, bringing people closer to God. Can you explain to everyone a little bit about that?
Sure. And in a way, they're kind of related because there is also a story, in the popular world, we sometimes refer to them as narratives. There's a narrative around homelessness that exists. And storytelling plays a role in that insofar as what we're trying to do with the work that we're involved in is, in some degree, rewrite that story, change that narrative. So story is a through line in a lot of things that we're doing. Specifically, to answer your question, my wife herself was homeless for about 7 years between the ages of 14 and 21, 22. And she's got her own story, which is pretty remarkable, and people can check it out. But early in our marriage, she felt called back out to the streets, and she rejected it like hardcore. I mean, the last thing she wanted.
She didn't let the devil win.
Well, she didn't let the devil win ultimately, but she resisted the initial call because she was scared. She knew what being homeless felt like. She knew what being out in the streets felt like. And when she heard the Lord say, "Go out there again," she initially resisted it. So it's like Jonah, like, I don't hear it. And a few days later, you end up inside of a fish. You know what I mean? That's basically the story with her. But ultimately, she did listen, and she went out to the streets and started befriending homeless folks because she recognized, and this would have been like 2000, like early 2000, like 2000, 2001, something like that. She recognized that one of the biggest travesties of someone who's unhoused is their invisibility, their sort of inability to be even seen, the fact that you might not hear your name for a month or longer. Like, can you imagine that? Like, you've called me my name like 10 times since we've been here, and like to just not hear your name. So on the basis of that, she really started befriending our homeless brothers and sisters and learning, like, what is it that you need and whatever.
And the help that they need, the resources they need.
Correct.
And that ties very well into what you are doing in your career. I know with your website, his website's here in the bottom of the screen, and your production company, Black Brown, you are all about the storytelling and helping people. And so I feel like you and your wife are like the power couple of what Jesus wants you to do, really helping our community and giving people a voice, those that are forgotten.
Yeah.
And going back to you being part of the Catholic Church, it's all for full circle, isn't it? For a lot of those who are watching and listening, I know we have a lot of people who are subscribed to our channel from all denominations. You know, being Catholic myself and yourself, explain to everyone the levels of, you know, from a priest, bishop, and deacon.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I like to explain it depending on who I'm talking to and how much time I have in a variety of different ways. The quick sort of like little kid answer when you've got 30 seconds to explain it is just like in the martial arts, there might be a black belt with different degrees. The priesthood is one with 3 degrees. So there's 3 degrees of the priesthood, the diaconate, the presbyterate, and the episcopate that we know as deacons, priests, and bishops. They're all mentioned explicitly in the New Testament. Those New Testament mentionings are fulfillments of the Old Testament ministry that we saw with the Aaronic priesthood and the Levites, and obviously when Jesus came, he became the high priest. So they're all kind of mirrored in each other, Old Testament and New Testament. But effectively what it means is that a man is set aside and ordained and called to a particular ministry. For the diaconate, the through line, if there was one, it's service. That's what the word deacon means. So it means to serve. And we're configured in a very unique and special way to Christ as servant, because Christ is king, yes. Christ is Lord, absolutely. Christ walked on water, but Christ also came to serve and not be served. In that particular, I guess, dimension of Jesus is the one that the deacon particularly like resembles and images out in the world. Right. And yeah, so there's a number of responsibilities that the deacon has, but more importantly, because it is a vocation, it's less about like what deacons do and more about just being
and the service
deacon.
And helping the community.
Yeah, it's a vocation. Like sometimes when people say like, well, what do you do as a deacon? And I go, well, it's kind of like asking, what do you do as a husband? Or what do you do? Where do you find time to be a dad? Like, I don't know. I just am a dad, am a husband, am a deacon. And I think that's a healthier way to think about the vocation to the diaconate. Now, again, to answer your question, there are some practical things that you can see deacons doing. They serve at Mass. They help in baptisms. They help in, they can perform matrimonies, marriages, things like that. You know, marry, bury, baptize, those are kind of the
sacraments.
Sort of shorthand. Yeah, the sacraments.
Assist with the sacraments. Beautiful.
Assist, and you can minister at 2 of them, baptism and matrimony specifically. The other ones require a priest, and then one of them requires only a bishop, which is Holy Orders itself. So, yeah, and I got ordained in 2017, and yeah, it's been awesome.
And again, it all ties into your career. And like I said, you and your wife are the power couple that Jesus wanted in our community.
Oh, that's sweet.
Especially
Thank you.
here in Los Angeles, where there is unfortunately a lot of homeless people. And
Yeah.
you know, it's a mix of unfortunate, you know, with drug use, abuse, maybe mental health issues, and they are forgotten.
Those are all present. And I would just say, just to add one thing, that even because we've been doing this for 20 plus years, all of the things you mentioned are exactly true. They are present and they're there. But when you ask what the cause of homelessness is, none of those are the cause. The cause of homelessness is a significant break in relationship. A friend of ours out in Austin, Alan Graham, who runs a great apostolate called Mobile Loaves and Fishes. He was on the Joe Rogan show not too long ago talking about what he's doing out in Austin. He says that the cause of homelessness is a catastrophic break in family. That's what causes homelessness. And then things like alcoholism, mental challenges, all those things are generally kind of byproducts of that reality. And once you get out in the streets, man, you're surviving. So like, you know, whatever you walk into the streets with gets amplified and sometimes worsened by virtue of being on the streets. Living on the streets is traumatic. That in and of itself is a challenge for a lot of people that itself creates other challenges.
Yes, no, you said it very well. And before I move on to my next question, what resources can you provide to me where we can put here in the bio of this channel to help people, find help if they have a loved one that is struggling and experiencing homelessness?
100%. Well, I would start with our own apostolate called Sophisa. So it's sophisa.org. That's SOFESA.org. And that is the ministry and the nonprofit that we run, which has our focus is 100% homeless families. Sad to say, but a third of the homeless people in Los Angeles County are families, moms and dads, or either or, living with children on the streets. And so our focus is 100% there. But through a relationship, we offer a bunch of different resources that, are out there in a variety of different ways. But the difference is how we offer them. For instance, when we onboard a new family, we do it over lunch. We'll sit, we'll eat, and we'll learn a little bit about each other. And then whatever resources or tools are out there to help them, we give it to them just like you would for your family or for your cousin or for whoever. It's like, oh, I heard about this thing. You should check it out. But you're doing it because you're in a relationship with the person. The challenge with homelessness right now and the complex that has been sort of erected around this issue, and it is a complex, is that they focus on the tool, the resource, or the program, and not the person. And at the center of homelessness is not a policy, but a person. And so the only thing we do different is just we do all the same tools, same resources, but we do it in the context of a relationship. So you could start with sophisa.org, and then there you can, there's a list of a bunch of different tools and resources. But again, the important part, whether somebody needs to refer us to somebody else or they want to do this work themselves, is to really not lose sight of the person that's sitting right in front of them.
Yeah, very well said. And I applaud you for that. Thank you so much for helping the community. I would like to know a little bit about Seeking Beauty. So you are working on something with David Henrie, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super great project. So you mentioned my producing stuff earlier on. Frankly, that's brand new for me. I've been in media for a long time, in secular media, in Catholic media, significantly newer, the last few years, and as a producer, only this year. So it's a brand new thing. I was a producer on a documentary feature that came out earlier in the year called Roadmap to Reality, the Carlo Acutis story. And Carlo Acutis is about to be canonized in Rome this weekend, actually, coming up. And this project with David Henrie is, born out of this desire to create content, to kind of go back to your first point, that, yes, is values aligned, but is also done in a way that reaches audiences today and reaches audiences today on the platforms and channels that they're on today. The Christian media establishment has been historically, let's just say, behind a little bit. I know you have somebody in your family who's very out there and part of the digital, cutting edge. Most people are not like that, in this world. So,
and I think it's because a lot of it is expensive to have content that doesn't have a lot of support from big sponsors.
100%.
So for those who don't understand too much about what it is to be a producer, there's levels of producing, right? And then there's levels of directing, and there's a whole thing. But when there's no funding, whether it's finance or sponsorship, it's very hard to create the best content. And unfortunately, something about being Christian can be taboo nowadays, which is unfortunate. And then, we have so many different churches, denominations. We have so much history, but some people just don't want to tap into that. They think that it's best to stay neutral. And unfortunately, that's why other big productions that might have rated R content or gossip content make the most money, unfortunately, because they get maybe the most financing and this and that. There's a whole other conversation for a podcast for that. But nonetheless, I think that's what it is. Unfortunately, there should be more money attached to faith-based content, especially for our youth. The youth is the future.
100%. Well, there should be. And I think part of the problem is that, to your point, the kind of monetization models for this kind of content have been historically very kind of one note. It's been philanthropic or kind of patronage, right? So somebody that who maybe is a person of means, and you go to them and say, I want to make a movie. Can you please invest 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is? And that is how, you piece together a lot of Christian media that's out there. But if you look at secular media has dozens, hundreds, thousands of ways that they monetize the same piece of IP in a variety of different ways, either through advertising, subscriptions, crowdfunding. There's 1,000 different ways. And Christian media and storytellers have been, it's not even a question of them being slower. It's just, it hasn't hit that world to the same degree that it's hit the secular world. And in some cases, it may never, because it creates in and of itself some challenges. For instance, a friend of mine, you probably know Ryan Bethea, who's the creator of The Exorcist Files. A friend of mine, he pitched his podcast series to iHeart, and they bankrolled it because they liked the idea. And then very promptly after he started doing the show, ad sales people for that company started sending him all of these ads that he didn't want to run in his podcast because they were against the faith. And so that leg of the monetization stool got kicked out right from under him because he could, yes, there's a lot of money to be made, but you have to kind of sell your soul a little bit to make that money. So there are those decisions that you have to make, and it's going to be harder for you as a Christian storyteller, no doubt. But guess what? That's what the good book said. Narrow gate, not wide gate. Carry your cross daily, right? So it's not like we haven't been warned. We know that it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but we should still kind of persist, right? Which is what this Seeking Beauty is like an example of, right? It's a show that is an adventure travel series, effectively. David Henrie hosts it. Season 1 is all Italy. Season 2, which is shooting this month, is Spain. And it's an adventure. It is literally a host discovering the world through the lens of beauty, starting in Italy. And what are the audiences for that show? It's like people that like travel.
And is he going to be touching base on like the history of Christianity, like the old Roman Empire? And, okay, that's going to be amazing because there are some, being that there's so many denominations of Christianity, I don't know if some people, when they go to Bible study, if they're really taught the whole history. And personally, I've noticed that I'm Catholic. My husband's non-denominational, but he loves to go to Catholic Mass because he finds it so educational.
Really? That's
and when we were taking our classes, to get married in the Catholic Church in Mexico, they were very all about the history and the timeline. He was like, my husband's 10 years older than me, and he was like, I had no idea about any of this. And his parents were ministers at a non-denominational church. He's like, I don't even think my mom knows this. But I think it's because maybe wherever you go, maybe whoever's teaching you, they might not know. And it's just so mind-boggling because I'm not saying bad about anybody. At the end of the day, we all are Christian. We all believe in Jesus, that he died on the cross for our sins. And nonetheless, I think that it's amazing that you and David Henrie are going to be doing something like this to really help the youth and understand the history.
It's a big part of it. The history is.
Even when it comes down to, who the Virgin Mary's parents were. Like, people don't even know their names, St. Anne. And there's the whole thing. Yeah, Joaquin. And,
that's right.
And at the end of the day, knowing all this won't help you pay your taxes one day. There's other things people probably want to learn, with this capital economy that we live in. But it's always beautiful to know where your faith comes from and the whole history behind it.
When that idea for Seeking Beauty was being developed, we talked a lot about this show doing something really well, but not trying to do all things at once. Because this is another challenge that sometimes befalls Christian media. Precisely because you've got so many people that are giving you checks to get it done, you start listening to all these people's voices and you kind of lose sight of what you're trying to make creatively. Somebody wants a little bit more of this, a little bit more history, a little bit more prayer, a little bit more whatever. And, that can happen and you can lose sight creatively of what you're trying to do. We had a very simple, I kind of boil it down to a sort of simple recipe for this show. The idea was to have a host, in this case, David Henrie, who was not necessarily an expert in what he was seeing. He represented the audience. We were going to go together. We wanted to experience these things almost like they're brand new. And the idea wasn't to have a host that's like telling you and teaching you stuff. And that's nothing wrong with that. It's just that wasn't what this show was. So it was, number one, that a host could allow the audience to travel with them.
Kind of like Bourdain.
Like Anthony Bourdain.
Because Anthony Bourdain, it wasn't that he was a culinary expert. I mean, he knew a lot about food, but he didn't know a lot about the food in Thailand until he got there.
And
He
he
didn't
knew
know a lot
even
about
less about like Vietnam culture or
Exactly.
something. You know what I mean? He was learning. Yeah,
was learning.
Exactly. That was a really key part. Zac Efron has a show on Netflix called Down to Earth.
Yes.
Like that's another
Great show.
similar comp, right? So it was like, hey, let me visit with you and explore with you rather than you teaching me something. That was one thing. The second thing was that these experts that join the host to talk about the things that are going on, that those people be authentic, real, local artisans. So not necessarily somebody who's got like 1,000 PhDs after their name or is a priest, and nothing wrong with priests or professors, but that were more like local kind of artisans, like they're really steeped in what's happening here, right? And then the third thing was that the host, again, David, would not just like be walking through a museum, but would get his hands dirty in every episode, actually doing something like as part of that particular experience.
I'm curious, only because I follow David on social media and I saw that he was posting at the Vatican, and I know this is the Jubilee year. Is there any content in regarding to that? I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it.
Well, there is, I will say, a Vatican episode. So there's plenty that's there. I won't reveal exactly what's in it, but the idea, because Italy is so rich, is to show in places like Venice and in Milan and in Subiaco, like how, again, beauty can be a lens by which we seek the transcendent, right? Seek God. And so, again, I think audiences, because you got people that follow David who know him from Disney Channel. You got people that like travel shows, maybe Anthony Bourdain.
I love travel shows.
Yeah. So,
That's
so
why I know of the one with Zac Efron as well.
totally. Yeah. So it's a broad audience.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm so happy that you are currently working on that project, and I'm excited to see where and when it'll
Comes out in December
Okay,
on
perfect.
EWTN Plus, which is EWTN's new platform. And yeah, we're getting started on kind of the junket and talking about it and, you know, having conversations like this about that show.
Yes, and also with that being said, aside from it coming out in December, once it's already out streaming, is it only going to be on that network, or can people find it on maybe Amazon Prime or any other networks from there?
So from a streaming vantage point, it will be available exclusively on EWTN Plus. Now, there will be other activities that will be more broad, YouTube and social channels and a variety of different things, but it is an EWTN Studios original, so it'll stay with them. Unless at some point, maybe down the road, it might be distributed somewhere else as part of a broader strategy, but right now the plan is EWTN Plus.
Amazing. My next question is, tell me a little bit about Black Brown and why the name Black Brown?
Sure. So I get that question quite a bit. So the name is an homage to Duke Ellington, famous jazz musician, who has an orchestral suite called Black, Brown, and Beige. So I liked it. I took a little bit, lifted it from it. Why did I like that? Because that piece of music describes the evolution of this country demographically. And what Black Brown does, my shop, is focuses on how the country continues to evolve, a lot more Latinos, et cetera, right? And what that means for businesses, for content, for story, for like all these different things. And so we help a wide range of people, companies or individuals, understand that reality so that they can do whatever they do better, focused on the fact that the country has evolved. By the way, the church even, right? We just talked about the Catholic Church, but in the Catholic Church today in the United States, well, I'll ask you, what percentage overall, not here in LA, the whole
nation.
The whole nation, what percentage of the Catholic Church is Latino? Catholics.
Oh, I would say 99%.
99% of Catholics?
Well, your question is, how many Latinos in this nation, the U.S., are Catholic?
How many Catholics in the U.S., like take all the Catholics
Oh,
in
I
the U.S.
see.
and then say what percentage of all the Catholics, we grab 100 Catholics.
I see.
What percentage of those Catholics
Are
are Latino?
Sorry, I switched it the
Yeah.
other way
Yeah.
around. I would say, well, mind you, I am Latina,
Sure.
Mexican. I grew up here in Southern California. I would say
And in Southern California, I mean, it's
we're
much more
majority.
pronounced. Yeah.
I would say maybe about 60%.
That's a great guess. And actually, if you were looking at younger Catholics under 18, you would be right. It's about 60%. All Catholics of all ages, it's about 40%. But still, most people, when they hear that number, they're like 40% of all Catholics in the U.S. are Hispanic.
Well, and also people kind of forget, not to get too deep in history, but from Texas all the way through the west up to more towards Oregon, it was all Mexico. So you still have a lot of last names that are probably third, fourth, fifth generation, and they're probably still very Catholic themselves. So I could see where there's just so many of us. And now being that we still migrate here for whatever reason to have opportunity, or if there's already opportunity and there's just want to be closer to family, there's so many other reasons. But nonetheless, a lot of Latinos are still very Catholic, whether you want to fly down to Mexico or Central America or South America. And I think, not to change the subject, but I think a lot of it is to do with knowing the history of Christianity and being so close to family. Earlier in this interview, you mentioned how a lot of people who are homeless because of the end result. There was a domino effect, maybe because unfortunately, maybe they were born with an illness, or they had head trauma and it caused an illness, or they were on drugs, or something happened, alcoholism, and now the family's like, I can't do this anymore, and it's over. That domino effect. But a lot of times in Latin America, that domino effect doesn't ever really happen. They find a way to house that person some way, somewhere, whether it's a church, a family member. A lot of rehabs also, specifically in Mexico, are free from the government. And there is just a lot more of that community help. And I think it's also a cultural thing.
Totally cultural.
And maybe one day here in the U.S., they would adapt to that unconditional extreme love that Jesus has for us, even right now. If we're all sinners at the end of the day, right? But he still loves us. So I think that's why sometimes people are still very old school Christian, which is, old school Christians, usually Catholic.
Well, you're highlighting one of the points, right? Latin American cultures tend to be much more collectivistic than American ones. American culture is very individualistic, right? But our cultures are much more about the family, community, suffering on behalf of the greater good, like things like that. The point about bringing up these differences, though, is that a lot of people running businesses or creating stories or whatever they're doing in the U.S. don't know these things. And so what we try to do, what Black Brown tries to do, is basically look at data and help them make sense of that for their given area, right? Back to the church, since the 1960s, so we're talking about 2 generations, the percent of Latino Catholics has quadrupled in 2 generations. Because initially, 100 years ago, Catholics were Irish, Polish, Italian. That's who was Catholic in the U.S. It wasn't Latinos. 100 years ago, Ellis Island, there were no Latinos coming through there. So, and in that period of time, since Ellis Island, right, whatever it was, less than 100 years, it's 85 years or whatever it is, it's been a dramatic sea change. And so if you were the Catholic Church, you might want to know that so that you can figure out how to do what you need to do every day. But whether it's the Catholic Church or Nike or Universal Studios, you need to understand the way things are changing. And so that's what we do, is we try to help them understand what's happened.
And it's also good that you're trying to open more doors up for more people, in the sense of, like, at the end of the day, when you look at other countries or continents, it's okay to be bilingual, trilingual, and accept other cultures. And unfortunately, I feel like there's been this stigma in the U.S. where it's okay just to be singular, one language, one culture. And it kind of goes against being Christian, doesn't it? Like, why are we all so different? We all have, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. In a sense, we're human, right? And I think it's good to be very inclusive, include more people, and give them opportunity, because some production companies, maybe they just want to make the money where the money's been made. Like, reality TV is such a big industry because for whatever reason, people like the drama. They like all of that nonsense, whether it's selling beautiful homes here in Los Angeles.
Sure, and they're not like super expensive shows to make, which is another, the margin is higher, right? Yes. But it's still about money.
Still about money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, those shows get dubbed in other languages, don't they?
Totally
so they get dubbed in Spanish.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be cool to have more content where people can relate to in different ways? Because there is money there for it. If it's all about the money, there is money there. We all know that. I mean, if you look at our Mexican cuisine, Colombia's music, they make money.
They
So
do.
it's cool for you to create something to include more people.
I think you're hitting on a couple of really interesting points. One of them is, yes, as Christians, specifically as Catholics, I mean, the word Catholic means universal, right?
Exactly, which people forget. Some
people
Catholics
forget.
don't even know that either.
Yeah, it's true. It means,
And
katholikos
it's a Greek
in
word.
Greek. That's right.
Greek.
It also means taken from the whole, right? So, but ultimately what it means is that all over the world, every language, every culture, every geography, that's what it means. And so one of the greatest things about being Catholic, especially if you've been blessed enough to be able to go travel and see different things, is being able to be Catholic in every single culture and language, because it gives you a sense of the universality that you're talking about. In the U.S., because we tend to be, again, more individualistic, there tends to be more of a tendency of this kind of more one note type of thing, mainly around, English. But yeah, we should probably be more expansive about our view. Now, having said that, I will tell you, this is a very controversial point of view, but I have a book coming out in February that deals exactly with this issue.
And what is the name of your book?
The name of the book is called Blind Spot. It's coming out from Notre Dame, from Ave Maria Press. But it deals with the Latino situation in the church in the United States. That's the whole point of the book. And my controversial take on this is that even though the Mass in Spanish is a great blessing and beautiful, and I participate in it almost weekly as a deacon, nevertheless, one of the sad byproducts is that it's tended to create two churches in every parish, where the communities don't really know each other. They pass each other in the parking lot. So you have community, but you don't have communion. And that's one of the challenges of having liturgies in a language, but it's not even the liturgy that's the problem. It's, other people looking at that and saying, oh, this is what the Latino community needs, and that's it. And not going beyond that. And so you end up with these really weird situations where you'll have a big community and, Mass at 9 is in English, Mass at 11 is in Spanish, and they cross each other in the parking lot like their team's going to a soccer game.
And then
You know what I mean?
Vietnamese is at 2.
Exactly. So you got Balkanization instead of community, right? So we have to face some of those things as Christians, and it's a tough conversation.
That's a good point. There is a famous church I like to go to in Garden Grove. We used to be called Crystal Cathedral. Now it's called
Christ Cathedral.
Christ Cathedral. And I've been going there since it became a Catholic church, because before it was a Protestant church, now it's a Catholic church. Beautiful, beautiful landmark in beautiful Orange County, California. But I think they do a good job at making community because Garden Grove is such a diverse city, and also North Orange County just is. You have so many different cultures. They do a lot of events, and I see there's so many different cultures. But I do think some of the smaller Catholic churches in Southern California maybe need to do more events, whether it's a local fair, which some of them do, or, like a fish fry during Lent. And, you being a deacon, I'm sure there could be a whole other podcast interview we could do about how we can help different cities and counties, because at the end of the day, the beauty about being Southern Californian is that there is so many different cultures and ethnicities, languages. You go, a few blocks down over here off Sunset Boulevard, there's Mexican, there's Chinese, there's Vietnamese, there's Japanese. And yeah, you can get some good old American hamburgers too. At the end of the day, it's just beautiful to see that. I know in other states, it's not like that. Other states, it's very different.
I think that some of the ways to create community, though, and happy to do a different show to talk about this because there's plenty to talk about. But some of the ways to do this are really simple. They're not even that complicated. I'll give you a couple of examples. In my parish, there was a time when the Latino community would make pozole and taquitos and different things like that after the Spanish Mass. Makes sense. A couple years ago, we're like, wait a minute, why don't they do that at every Mass? Not just the Spanish Mass.
That's a good point.
Conchas. Well, conchas are donuts without a hole, basically. Why don't we have conchas at every Mass? Forget donuts and coffee. Just do conchas, right? It's so dumb as an example, but it's just to make the point, right? Another thing that we did is we used to have events. If we're going to deliver the same bit of information, we'd have one in English and one in Spanish. What we started doing is just having one. And as people walked in, said, do you prefer Spanish? Okay, if you do, then we're going to give you a little FM transmitter. We're going to have somebody in real time literally translating what's going on. But we're in the same room. We're laughing at the same jokes. We're hearing the same information. We're eating together at the same time. Like, it's not oftentimes super complicated things, but communion is different than community. You can have community. There's communities everywhere. You got Facebook Marketplace as a community. But communion is actually a gathering together around not just shared ideas, but around a shared reality, a shared person, Jesus, right?
Yes.
So it's hard to do that if you're in separate rooms, you know? So yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated.
No, very well said. Going back to, communion and the Eucharist, it's just, at the end of the day, we're breaking bread and it's the body of Christ. And he did that on purpose, to have us understand the importance, in the Last Supper as well, like, take this bread. And it just shows how, at the end of the day, with all the suffering going on in the world, he died on the cross for our sins. The Last Supper before he passed, we should all be together at one. And I know different churches have it a little bit like the one in Garden Grove, probably because it's a huge church. For all those who don't know about Christ Cathedral, look it up online. It is gorgeous. It's just glass crystal walls everywhere. It's spectacular.
I think it is too. There's a lot of people who are like, what is this? This isn't Catholic.
Yes, you can look it up online, but it is beautiful. So aside from that, tell me a little bit about more about Black and Brown and other things you have going on. I know that there's a premiere this coming weekend, which I'm honored to be part of in Dallas.
Thank you for bringing that up.
So I would like to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So that film is called Triumph of the Heart, and it's directed by a guy named Anthony D'Ambrosio, who you will meet, I'm sure, in an interview. It's a friend of mine. He had this idea, kind of a crazy idea I heard about for the first time 3 years ago. And he said, I want to do the St. Maximilian Kolbe story. And for those who don't know, St. Maximilian Kolbe was, died in the Second World War in a concentration camp, basically stood in for a man who was going to be killed. He said, no, I'll go in his stead because he's got a family. So he martyred himself basically on behalf of somebody else. Anyway, Anthony wanted to do St. Maximilian Kolbe's story, but shot as 12 Angry Men, which is a very famous movie that's been remade a bunch of times, but it all takes place in one room, essentially. So he wanted to create the St. Max story all in one room. And the room is the cell in which St. Maximilian Kolbe has been doomed to die with a number of other people, right? Because they starved them. It was really terrible.
Horrible time.
But the conversations that they have, the revelations that they have, right? The inspiration that they have over those final days is effectively what the movie's about. Now, it doesn't just end there. It's not like gloom and doom. It has a redemptive piece at the end of it, but it fundamentally uses that kind of concept. And it's, beautifully written and beautifully shot and all grassroots. Raise the money crowdfunding, literally smiling and dialing 1,000 different phone calls to 1 million different people, bringing people together to try to create a groundswell for it. I'm very happy that you're going to be going out there on this coming weekend. And it has its theatrical, debut, basically. I'm hopeful that, not just from Anthony, but that it might inspire other creators to like, hey, this person did it. They followed their dream and, made this movie, defying every odd you can imagine. I mean, like literally every odd. So, yeah.
And is there any way that someone that might be listening or watching right now can help support this movie so that I can keep growing? Because I know it's a premiere, but at the end of the day, we want it to still stream somewhere and grow and maybe make the news, big headline news, so that more people can be aware. Because at the end of the day, going back into like the history of the Christian church, sometimes people will even forget their own history of wars that we've endured, our great-grandparents have endured in the past. And it's just a really sad time that people just forget about stuff like that.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. You can Google Triumph of the Heart. I believe it's triumphoftheheart.com. If not, maybe you guys
We'll
can
put it here at the bottom of the screen.
There you go, whatever the right domain is. And that will show you the different ways that you can support it, either by helping to sell out a theater near you, because that's another part of this, is showing the exhibitors that there's an audience for these films and this content. So that's a way you can do it. Obviously, you can pray for its success. The other thing is, and the reason I like this as an example, is that it shows a type of storytelling that maybe hasn't been seen as much, right? So typically when we do saint stories, it's almost like we're using Wikipedia to write the script, right? Born here, at 5 years old did this, at 12 did this. and you try in an hour and a half to get like the person's whole story. It's like,
It's tough.
no, that's
so you have to pick a segment of their life. That's usually the
There you
best
go.
way to tell a story.
There
like
you go.
Padre Pio is a great example. You
Yep.
know, there's a lot of different ways you can portray him in theater or in film. And usually filmmakers in that aspect, when it comes to film, they'll pick a period of his life.
Correct. And so that's what makes this interesting too. And I think, that's part of a broader thing that I think we as Christian media people, whatever, realm we're in, we need to focus on all the different gradations and variations of storytelling that exist. Not everything needs to be on the nose. Not every story about a saint needs to cover everything about a saint, right?
Unless it was a Netflix series, that's different.
Well, yeah, exactly. With a 4-season story arc or
Yes.
something, great. But if it's a film, right, so one of these little lines that kind of came to me one day of the kind of thing that I think we need more of, because look, I want more stories about saints, not less. I want more masses being streamed. I want more of the on-the-nose Catholic stuff. I'm not saying on-the-nose Catholic stuff isn't good. I think it's great. I think we need more of it. But if you think about it as a funnel, right? People becoming aware of what the church is, considering what the church is, becoming Catholic or being reinforced in their Catholicism, that's a process. And the way I see it, we don't have a lot of content in the middle and top of that funnel, right? So when I think about it, we need more stories that have God as the object, even when he's not the subject. That we haven't done, like a lot of, right? It's like, oh, we're going to make a Christian thing. Watch how Christian we make it. It's like super, super Christian. And that's great. We should need more of that stuff. But we don't have a lot of stories that draw people into that and go like, what is this? That's interesting. Let me learn more about that. And then maybe the next movie they saw can be the sort of on-the-nose Christian thing, right? Secular world has this stuff figured out. Like, it's like the teen stuff leads to the tween stuff, leads to the parent stuff, leads to the sports stuff. They're all like intertwined because they recognize that people age and they go through different stages. We're way behind that in terms of that spirituality walk and how to program for that spirituality walk. Because it's not like everybody started Catholic. Like, it's a journey. Even for me, I'm a revert. I was born Catholic. I had no idea what it meant to be Catholic. I sort of re-became Catholic in my early 30s. So there was a period of time where like certain things could have nudged me to the next tier. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and I want to add to that too, because I feel like that's very common. I don't know if it's something God wants for everyone. For example, this I've noticed for all denominations. When it comes to us Catholics, we're baptized, right? When we're about a month, 3-4 months, or within that year of being an infant. And that's kind of our way to protect us, gift of discernment and all that. And then we have our sacraments. So we go to the Bible study, we go take our classes for our first communion, then we have our confirmation. And then something about our 20s, I don't know if it's just like an American culture thing, 'cause I know other cultures, they're a little different. It's more party culture here, isn't it? So it's very party culture, dating around, party, drinking. And I feel like it's very common for people to lose their faith. And I know I'm talking in being Catholic, but I also my other friends who are Protestant or Lutheran or non-denomination or whatever, Christian church they attend, they all have the same
They see some
story.
of the same stuff, yeah.
And it's very interesting. I think it might be a cultural thing. In some parts of the world might be kind of same, because I know some cultures also have that. It's your 20s, like the roaring 20s, fiesta, party. And it is interesting, but what is beautiful is when people come back, whether they come back in their 30s and they feel like they need to get baptized again, because Jesus was baptized when he was 30, or if they feel like it happens in their 40s. Some people it happens in their 50s, maybe they made a lot of bad decisions, they had a divorce, and now they're coming back to God. It's very interesting. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's God's plan. We all have our own journey, but it's very interesting. Some people's journey is harder than others, like your wife's journey. I highly recommend people to watch that episode on Lila Rose. Wow, amazing story she has. And it's just very interesting. So I just wanted to add to what you just said.
I think it's a confluence of things sometimes. When you think about it from an American standpoint, yes, people have this moment of like, they're out of their parents' house, they're going to college.
And
like,
people's brains are not developed. Okay, that is scientific right
that's
there.
That's right, until you're about 25 or 6, yeah.
Well, now they're saying maybe 30.
Oh, really? Okay. And the dumber we get, the more they'll say it's like 35, really. No, it's 40. But so there's that happens for sure. But it's also coincided with a period of time in American culture where marriage rates have dramatically decreased. So you used to get from your childhood into your vocation far faster. Now there's this prolonged sort of childhood that happens because we're not following our vocational track, whether that's marriage or religious life or the priesthood or whatever it is, as quickly after we become adults. I think those things together are part of the reason why people wander and then come back in their 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is. And yeah, look, the way that I always say it is, of course, it's great that people wander back. And of course, God's got you. He's going to give you a chance every moment you're alive to return to him. However, we shouldn't desire that. There's nothing that says you must go and wander all of these philosophical avenues and then eventually when you're 40 become Christian again. It's like nobody said that. Like, so we accept that, but we shouldn't desire that. And I think sometimes when I talk to parents, it's a little strange because they're kind of like on the fence. Well, they're going to go away, but they'll come back. I'm like, yeah, you don't know that, number one.
Don't know that.
And number two is, we shouldn't want that, right? But yeah, it's a fascinating question, and I'm sure there's 1,000 reasons why it happens, but it hasn't been that way, in other parts of the world and in other times, so it doesn't have to be that way now.
It's almost as if we need to pray more of the Saint Michael's prayer. So, for example, our new Pope took on the name Pope Leo for a reason. And for anyone who doesn't know, you can look it up why he took the name Pope Leo. But so we even say that during prayer, at church, our St. Michael prayer, so that the devil doesn't, intervene too much in our lives. So it's almost as if so much temptation is what I'm trying to tie you to. There's so much temptation. So at the end of the day, we have to stay close to God as much as we can. Life is not easy no matter what. Some people have it harder than others. But at the end of the day, it's always good to try your best to be closer to God, make it to heaven, because all I can say is this world is tough. And if you don't have faith, it's going to be even harder.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how you can do it without it.
Exactly. So before we end the podcast, I really want to talk about your podcast.
Sure.
And how people can watch and listen.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So my show is called Living the Call. And it's a conversation show, just like this one that we're having. And it's basically situated at the intersection of people's vocation and cultural influence. So you're going to have to come visit my show, because the whole premise of the show is people who are living out their Christian calling in a position of cultural influence. Actors, directors, producers, scientists, artists, bishops, CEOs, like you name it. And it's been around for about 4 years. And it's a bi-weekly show. It's been weekly at certain points. It's on every platform, Living the Call with Deacon Charlie. And it's been a real blessing to be able to have conversations about all kinds of stuff. I mean, literally anything and everything, right? Theology. And I had Dr. Greg Bottaro on the show not too long ago. He's a very well-known Catholic psychologist. And we spent most of the episode talking about like psychedelics and AI therapy and stuff like that. So it's, I start every show with like, I tell the guests, it's your show, right? The Holy Spirit will decide. And I try not to script or define anything. And so sometimes we get off into some strange areas, but it's a lot of fun.
So it's like a faith-based Joe Rogan. Because I know Joe Rogan's podcast is an array of different topics at times.
Well, it's interesting. And I try not to read too much into this because I don't want to get any sort of false illusions. But that connection's been made before. It is a longer format show. It doesn't have like a clock. So I think the shortest show is like 50 minutes. The longest show was 3 hours. So it's like,
At the end of the day, with YouTube, people love this day and age that we're in where you can watch anything and pause it. You can watch your favorite TV shows on YouTube and pause it. Back in the day, in the early 2000s, even then, people had to like, oh man, I got to record my show. All that's over. So you can even watch your podcast while you're working out in traffic, which is what we were in earlier getting here. So the cool thing about podcasting, it could be 30 minutes, could be an hour, could be 3 hours. It's fine. People will pause, go back to the gym next day, finish watching
That's where
it.
we're getting our nutrition. I mean, like what kind of stuff are you listening to Catholic-wise on YouTube and that kind of thing?
Well, with me...
Mostly podcasts, or were you listening to other things?
I'm really into faith-based music whenever I work out, or I'll do, when it comes to podcasting, I do like Lila Rose, or educational fitness stuff. I'm really into a lot of not in a shallow way, but like anti-aging or gut health or any way to make me feel like, longevity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Zac Efron, we were just talking about his travel show, but he's also really big into longevity. His co-host for that show, he's like a longevity guru.
Yeah.
And that is, again, another topic for another day we can talk about. But I do feel like if you have a good understanding of diet, exercise, and all that, what's good in it shows out, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about faith at that end, because some people really lose themselves because if maybe they drink too much or they eat horrible junk food, which is unfortunately our culture is a lot of processed food. So I'm really into those topics,
Ultra-processed, yeah.
and that's why with the Christian channel, we always talk about positive content, whether it's faith-based or it's entertainment with films. Why that film is so inspirational. On this channel, you can find a quick interview I did with Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo, even though he's like a tough guy in the movies, this film that I interviewed him, it's an indie film called American Warrior. He's a coach, and he's teaching this guy how to get back his MMA fame. And it's all about redemption. This guy, fell in trouble with the law. Now he's back. Now he's trying to gain his credibility. And it's a whole thing about redemption. And isn't that what being a Christian is about? Sometimes you lose your faith. You got to get the redemption back. And Danny Trejo, for all those who know him, his history, he was incarcerated. He was in prison. He found God again, came out, and he has a whole documentary talking about that as well. So long story short, I love content like that.
Yeah.
Whether I'm talking about it here on the Christian channel or I'm producing content like that, or that's what I watch.
Or you're interviewing people about what they're doing.
Yes,
Yeah, no, I
that's
totally
more
get it.
my niche, because some people are into other stuff and whatever makes them happy, but it's not me. Like they'll do gossip, fashion gossip. Oh, I can't believe they wore that. Or a lot of other things, but nonetheless, I'm really into educational, positive stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned MMA. Just one final point that I don't think we touched on too much, because your MMA comment reminded me of a new film that's coming out called The Smashing Machine, which features Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's getting all kinds of press for like getting an Academy Award and all that stuff. But in that movie is a well-known Catholic actor named Bas Rutten, who's a former MMA athlete. Plays himself actually in the movie, but he's been in a bunch of Kevin James movies and all of that. The reason I'm bringing it up is I hope that movie gets an Academy Award. Maybe Boss gets an Academy Award too. Who knows? But I'm sensing a bit of a moment in Catholic media right now, in Christian media more broadly, where a lot of the sort of secular world is looking at Christian stuff maybe with a new set of eyes and saying, wait a minute, what is this? Now, that's good and bad. It's good insofar as more money, resources, attention, distribution to the gospel is great. It's bad if we become reliant on it, because it'll fizzle away just as much as it's popping off right now.
And if there's one bad apple, it ruins it for everyone, right?
Exactly.
So as long as people understand, just because if that were to happen, only because it's Hollywood, you just never know nowadays, for people to just kind of see both sides of the situation. But I do hope that there will be more faith-based content.
Yeah.
Being that, what are we going to do when us millennials aren't around anymore? The Gen Z and the Gen Zs have kids. If all the content is going to where it is right now with horrible streaming platforms of these apps that sometimes are negative, I won't say which ones, or interviews where it's gossip, it's just harming the youth. And it's better to have more content out there where they can either educate them, make them feel good, and make them feel like they have some type of path to follow.
Story is definitely upstream from culture. We need more and better stories, and we need to do them with better, like more excellence. And that requires looking at the whole value chain, basically, and kind of tweaking it so that creators can have the wherewithal to make these things. I do think it's good that Hollywood is seeing the success of like House of David and The Chosen and King of Kings.
Light of the World is one. We did an interview with them as well, which is also on this channel. Light of the World.
Perfect. I mean, a really beautiful animated project. I mean, so I think it is good that it's seeing it, because it means hopefully somebody will turn around and say like, hey, maybe we need more of this kind of stuff. But again, don't attach yourself to that, right? We should be wanting to do it even if that doesn't happen. But it happens to be happening right now, and I think that's a good thing. I don't care how more good Catholic content gets made, just that it does, right? And so if I can play a little role in helping to connect people with one another, to bring opportunity to them, which is a large part what a producer does, certainly an executive producer, then I'm happy to do it. Because a lot of times it's just literally about connecting one dot to the other, and then boom, magic happens, right? So yeah, but I think we're in a cool moment right now, and we should be happy about that.
Amen. Very well said. Well, thank you so very much for tuning in here to the Christian Channel. I'm your host, Yanitza Munoz, and I'm here with Deacon Charlie. You can find his website here at the bottom of the screen. And also, if you guys would like to attend Mass, Deacon, let everyone know which parish you serve Mass at.
St. Mark in Venice, California, the most colorful parish in the entire Archdiocese of LA.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Until next time, I'm Yanitza Munoz.